Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to wait a few minutes for more people to join before we get started. All right, let's get started. Um, so thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Before we dive in, I do want to do a little introduction and housekeeping. If you don't know who we are, Taboola is the world's leading discovery platform used by over 20,000 companies to reach over 1.4 billion people each month. And today we're diving into the auto vertical. We want to talk about how to run great auto marketing campaigns. And auto for us today, of course, is going to mean cars, but it also means all auto related products, everything that might fall into the auto vertical, from accessories to your car, to car parts, to car related items. So yeah, we'll talk about it today. And also on the right-hand side of your screen, the GoToWebinar control panel, there is a questions module. Feel free to ask us any and all questions throughout the webinar, and we'll try to get to them at the end of our presentation. And finally, we will send out the recording of this webinar and the deck to everyone in the following week after the webinar. So let's introduce ourselves.
Okay, cool. So hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Zalta. I am Taboola's Global Research and Insights Lead. My background is in psychology, so I have an MA in social behavioral psychology. My focus is on persuasion psychology and online behavior, so you might hear a little bit about that in this webinar. Yeah, I've been in Taboola for quite a while now. I would say it's even closer to 5 years, which is crazy. And what I do, or the reason why Taboola hired me, is because they understood that looking only at behaviors or only at numbers isn't really enough. We need to understand what's behind the numbers. Why are people behaving in different ways? And that's what I'm here for. So hopefully you guys find this interesting. Feel free to follow me on social. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Megan. I'm Tabula's Senior Content Marketing Manager. I have a BA in journalism and media studies and started my career in journalism, but I've been in content marketing now for about 7 years, 3 of which were at Tabula, all of which have been at various B2B technology companies. I've worked in ad tech, MarTech, HR tech, security, and with many different types of brands in the technology space. You can tweet me too at Megan Rose M. And if you do want to talk on social media about anything you're hearing on this webinar, we would love it if you use the hashtag Tabula Talks. So just to get started, we do want to talk a little bit about the market opportunity in the automotive industry, which is massive. First of all, the automotive category is a $278 billion opportunity for marketers. And as a little tidbit, over 77 million cars were sold last year. So huge market opportunity for which online campaigns are critically important, which—
That's a lot of cars. Sorry. 77 million, that's insane.
It's a lot of cars. And many people sometimes discount the online campaigns for the automotive industry because it's not typical for somebody to buy a car online. A car is a huge project almost to purchase. It's definitely a longer funnel product, but research from Think with Google reports that 95% of users are researching about cars online before they make a purchase. While 95% of purchases are still happening at the dealership, people are definitely turning to online channels to get their research done and find what they want before they actually go to the dealership to make that purchase. So in order to capitalize on that $278 billion opportunity, your online strategy definitely needs to be sound. So we want to talk a little bit today about the opportunity online. We took a look into our network, which has millions of advertisements running across the network at once, to find out where is the best time and place for auto marketers to distribute and promote auto content and landing pages to their audiences. In this data, we take a look at what we call supply versus demand. So supply is the amount of content related to the auto vertical that's running across our network at any time. And then the demand is the amount of people that are clicking on that content. When there's low supply and high demand, we determine that that's a big opportunity for marketers to capitalize on. So we'll talk about many different types of data and the supply and demand for many different types of data, but in general, that's the framework for our analysis for this webinar. So first, we want to talk about finding the right people. And in order to find the right people for your content, you have to know where they are online and when they're online. So the first piece of data that I want to talk about with you is devices. Where are auto audiences looking at content online? Desktop, mobile, and tablet devices. So looking at this graph here, the bars at the bottom are the supply that we just talked about, and the dots at the top are the click-through rate or the demand. And here we see a low supply of auto content running on tablet devices and a rather high demand. And we do think that auto marketers should be testing tablet devices for their next campaigns. Similarly, I want to talk about time of year. So there are various times of year that are more hot, I guess, for the auto vertical and for people having demand for auto-related content. Mostly the trend that we want to point out to you here is don't forget about the beginning of the year. The summer season has an extraordinarily high opportunity for auto marketers, particularly in the US. We see a lot of sales around that time of year. So a lot of auto marketers are already prepping and preparing for the summer season, but the beginning of the year also has an extraordinarily high demand for cars as well. So keep that in mind when planning your budgets for the year.
Yeah, so if we look at day of week, this is interesting. You know, I always like to think like before I see the data, I'm like, I wonder which day of week would work best. So what we see here is if we look at the CTR, at the click-through rate, we see the click-through rate is actually highest on Sunday. And that's actually the day where the spend is the lowest, meaning there's a very good opportunity for auto advertisers on Sunday. Similarly, Mondays and Thursdays are a good opportunity. And yeah, those are the especially good days. And then this one is interesting. So here we're not looking at the day of week, but here it's the time of the day. And here we're seeing that in the morning, like if we look at 6 a.m., right, that's where the CTR, the demand isn't so high, right? It's pretty low there, and it kind of goes up throughout the day. And then if we look at the spend or the supply, it's like it reaches its peak in the morning hours, like 9 a.m., and then the rest of the day it goes down. So basically, if you're thinking about the opportunity, the best times to advertise for auto marketers would be from around like 4 p.m. That's when the supply is really low and the demand is really high. So good time to be advertising there.
Awesome. And when running advertisements on the open web in particular, which is what we do, you can also target by site. So I just wanted to note this about targeting by site specifically. You can make specific decisions about where your auto content is placed based on context if you'd like to. But we do recommend when starting out to target site as widely as you're comfortable with. Because you'd be surprised what types of sites people will click on auto related content for. And then when you see which sites are performing best for you, you can narrow down your spend by site from there. And the same goes for audiences and audience segments. You can choose audience segments to target just like you can target site. But the audiences that work on other sites, on maybe on like social and search platforms, aren't necessarily going to work here. The mindset is a little bit different, and we recommend targeting as wide as you're comfortable with to start, or even no targeting by audience at all to start. Seeing what types of audiences your content is attracting, and then again narrowing it down from there. You'd be surprised, you might discover new audiences for your particular brand when you're doing this. So next, the data we want to talk about is actually capturing their attention. Once you've found and you've reached people online, how do you get them to click and engage? So first off, I want to chat about the type of content that you're running. So most auto marketers seem to be running text-based articles. And the click-through rates are way higher and the supply is way lower, actually, for both photo galleries and video landing pages, which seems intuitive, right? I mean, a photo gallery, especially if you're shopping for a car, you certainly want to see as many photos of it as possible, I would imagine. And video landing pages, maybe videos of the cars, videos of people driving around. There's not a lot of supply out there for auto marketers and video. So if you do have video to help with your next campaign, we do recommend testing a landing page with that video embedded on it.
Okay, cool. So now we're going to talk about the creatives. Let's start from sponsored content examples. So we were looking at our top sponsored content campaigns, and we noticed some really cool trends. So here are 4. So one of them was rankings, looking at different types of cars and how people are ranking them has been very popular and has worked pretty well. So an example would be, these are the top 10 economy cars of 2019. Another one is urgency. So saying something like what everyone should buy after an accident, and there are actually a lot of different examples for urgency, both in the video and in the sponsored content world. Another one is black and white. So this is something that we've noticed that's been trending. Black and white images, also some black and white videos. And if you look at trends, which I'm going to introduce later, the website trends, there you'll see that black and white images are actually getting a higher CTR on Taboola right now. And one more thing is price specifics. So getting into specifics about how much your car is going to cost has been really working very, very well. I've found that getting into specifics about price is good also for the CTR, but also for the conversion rate. So something to definitely take into consideration. There were a couple other things. So we've noticed that when the cars, right? So like, of course, the images are going to be images of cars, but sometimes it could get kind of boring, right? So you're going to see another like car and it kind of gets lost. What I've seen that works well are some weird angles. If you can get some like cool or weird angles of the car, that is something that has worked pretty well. And GIFs is something else that can be really cool too.
Awesome. So taking into consideration some of those recommendations that Rachel just ran through with you, this is an example of how you can use sponsored content to move someone entirely through your funnel. So I'm sure you're aware of the three basic steps in the funnel: awareness, consideration, and decision. So for an awareness campaign, you might want to run a sponsored content article or video or photo gallery about how to take care of your vehicle with natural products. That headline there qualifies somebody who's looking for, very interested in their car, cares a lot about their car, is definitely interested in auto related content. On the consideration step, something like "Auto shoppers beware this common dealership trap." This particular headline is engaging, but also qualifies people that are likely going to dealerships or thinking about going to a dealership and don't want to get caught in a trap when purchasing a car. They're definitely considering an auto purchase. And then finally, the decision stage: shop top all-wheel, that's a little bit of a tongue twister. Shop top all-wheel drive vehicles under $25,000. You're certainly qualifying. If somebody's clicking on this, they're interested in purchasing a car sometime in the very near future.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So now we'll talk about video creatives.
Sorry, the clicker is a little delayed. All right, so we took a look at some different videos that show a little bit some different trends that are working for the auto industry. So I want to show them to Rachel, and Rachel, I want to see if you can guess the strategy that the brands are using here.
Okay, good luck to me.
You wanted all year. The end of year sell-off at Gateway Hyundai. This is your final chance to get brand new Hyundais for thousands off. Brand new Elantras, final chance, only 99 bucks a month. Brand new Sonatas, final chance, only $149 a month. Brand new Santa Fe's, final chance, only $199 a month. And everyone with America's best warranty, but it's only for an extremely limited time. And it's only at Gateway Hyundai. GatewayHyundai.com. This time of year doesn't last long.
Okay, I must have heard the word final chance like 5 times.
Yes.
Feels like a sense of urgency. Yeah, cool.
Correct. Yeah, this is definitely a sense of urgency. Hyundai ran this last chance sale ad, I think, in 2018. And certainly, conveys a sense of urgency, but gets people into their dealerships for a final chance for a sale.
Yeah, and I think this is something that a lot of, auto advertisers are doing these, I mean, always, right? This is like like a really big strategy. And I feel like sorry, what were you saying?
I was just going to say it's a pretty trendy strategy for sure.
Yes, and if we try to think about the psychology behind this a little bit, So it definitely relates to FOMO, right? That fear of missing out. But I feel like this is an even more extreme sense of FOMO, right? Like you might miss out on this really good deal. You're going to want it in a few months. So yeah.
All right. So next up, we have this ad from Honda.
Cool. So I noticed a bunch of different strategies. Okay, number one, the car is like red and that kind of sticks out for me. Then I want to know which one you were thinking about. Number two, I feel like it was slow motion, right? Like a lot of, oh, okay, fine. A lot of these car commercials are actually, I feel like quicker, right? The car's kind of zooming in, and this was pretty slow.
Yeah.
So that was another one. And then there were a lot of like zooming in on the logo and zooming in on like different like parts of the car. So um, those are the three different things I noticed. And should we talk about them for like a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so red car. So red is interesting. And if you've ever heard any of our other webinars, you've probably heard this before. According to most studies, it's not that red always works, like red is always getting attention, but it's the colors that are different that are kind of sticking out from their surroundings. So if you're putting together a creative or trying to choose a creative, um, having a red car or having a car with a color that is kind of different, right? So like a bright green car would work as well, or a bright yellow car. Those are going to be grabbing a lot of attention because they're different than their surroundings. And then slow-mo is an interesting one. We actually have a blog post about this too. So there are a lot of different studies about slow-mo that basically what they do is that they force the person to pay more attention to details, which makes sense, right? We have more time to pay attention to the details. And there are different links between slow-mo and emotion. So sometimes when we see something in slow motion, it actually makes us feel like whatever we feel in a stronger way, which is kind of cool. And then the logo, I guess the zooming in on the logo just helps us, focus on the logo a little bit more and remember the logo a little bit more after.
Which is another really trendy thing that I feel like I see in auto ads all the time, is zooming in on the logo. A little bit of
Yeah,
brand awareness for you. All
totally.
right, so I think we have one more. Here we go.
Oh my God, I'm cracking up.
Well, that's a good sign.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
this is definitely humorous. I feel like there's also this like music that kind of makes me like feel good, right?
Yeah,
So there's like positive emotion and humor. And yeah, so is that it? Did I get it right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, so humor and positive emotions in general. We know that if you're a big brand and you're advertising some kind of video, you're not actually trying to necessarily sell that specific product that's in the video. Most of the time, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create an emotional bond between your brand or your product and your audience, which is much more powerful and much more cost effective than just trying to get that person to buy that specific product. And so using humor or trying to increase those positive emotions or positive feelings towards your brand by creating these kinds of ads is a trend that people are definitely using in the auto industry, but also outside the auto industry. And it's probably one of my favorite strategies, right? It's like fun to watch. You want to continue watching. You're like, what is happening?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun searching for funny car ads for
Yeah.
for sure.
Like there are a few Super Bowl funny car ads too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Okay, so this was actually a surprise slide for Megan here. Um, yeah, so we have an eye tracker at Taboola, and we use it a lot when we look at different videos to try to understand what's grabbing people's attention. So we had one for Mazda that I wanted to show here. If you look at those blue or red spots, this is actually on a loop, so you can see the full video later, but this is just 5 seconds of it. And you can see that the places in the video that people are looking at are the person's face, right? You'll see it in a second, right? That's always going to be the number one thing that people look at. And then if the face isn't there, the person's always looking at the movement. So anything that's moving, you could see like that balloon or hand, right? So if we're thinking about what types of creatives work, including movement and including people when possible, those are going to be two great ways to kind of grab that attention. Cool. Okay, so I mentioned trends earlier. For whoever is not familiar, trends.taboola.com is a website that I would say we gave access to everyone. We gave everybody the access. How long ago was it, Megan? Like 3 years ago, I
yeah,
think.
3
Like
years
it's
ago.
been up there for a while. We've only added video trends around a year ago. And what we do, or the reason why we started this site is because we tried to put together best practices. And in order to put together those best practices, we analyzed all of our data to see what types of images and what types of videos are working well. And we came up with best practices and we put it into a PDF. And then like 2 months later, we reanalyzed the new data, and we found that the best practices changed. And we were like, oh my God, the trends online are not static, they're changing all the time. And therefore we need to also change the best practices. And so that's how trends.taboola.com was born. What we do here is every single week, we take all of our all of the data that we have, all of the creatives that are running on our network, and we analyze them for best practices. So the first thing I would do is I would go on the site, filter by autos, and see what types of images are working well right now. You can also look at what types of videos work well, what types of words work well, and this is going to be really, really helpful when you put together creatives for a campaign. And then this is a new tool on trends.taboola.com. This is called the Title Analyzer or the Title Predictive tool. And this is probably one of my favorite tools. What you do here is this is going to be for a sponsored content campaign usually, although you can really use it for any title that you want to write. And you'll write a title, for example, where to find the safest vehicle in Pennsylvania. And what you're going to do is you're going to try to challenge yourself and change 1 word, 2 words, change the sentence around, make it into a question, and see and test it again and then see which title variation has the highest predictive CTR. So this, what it does is it goes to our algorithm and it asks Taboola's algorithm which title has a higher predictive CTR, and then it tells it to us, like to advertisers. So it's really, really helpful when you want to test different titles and you don't want to run them live in a campaign yet. So testing a bunch here, finding the titles with the highest predictive CTRs, and then testing them live, only testing the top 5 live in a campaign is probably what I would suggest.
I have to say that this is my favorite tool on the entire Trend site. So as a content marketer, I write a ton of headlines and I use it all the time. One of my favorite ways to use it is, I think there are a lot of headline templates out there. Like, we all know that using numbered lists or ultimate guides or how-tos or many different like title variations, I try to debunk popular myths. And one of them, I was trying to write a blog post the other week and I was basically debunking the how-to myth. I think people might be getting tired of that one, but yeah, just a plug for me for this tool. I find it extraordinarily useful and I really like it.
Wait, so what happened with the how-to myth? Was it high or low predictive CTR?
It was lower than things like one that you have here, like top 10 safest, like some of the numbered list ones, and I think a few others that were asking questions were ranking higher than the how-to.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, so lastly, the last piece of data that we have for you today is a little bit on how to measure for your success. So this is just a picture of the types of KPIs that other marketers in the auto industry are targeting on the open web. And this makes a lot of sense here. So like we said at the beginning, 95% of people are doing research online and actually making purchases at a dealer. So there aren't many marketers out there targeting purchases online. There are many, many more trying to generate leads and page views. More so lead generation and hopefully retargeting those audiences with more content to move people down their funnel. So just to wrap it up a little bit, some of the highlights of what we chatted with you guys about today. We definitely would love it if you would test targeting a campaign with tablet devices. Get a little bit more familiar with video too. Video landing pages are doing really well on the open web, and using some of those video marketing strategies and also sponsored content strategies like rankings, urgency, price specifics, red cars, and humor. And then also, of course, to check those image, video, and keyword trends regularly because they are changing all the time. And all of the insights that we talked with you today, plus a whole lot more, are in our auto industry benchmark report, which you can get at that URL there on the bottom left hand of the screen. There we have more insights for you, more campaign examples, more pieces of data, and beyond this general global overview, we break things down specifically by country throughout the report. So it's really helpful to get a little bit more specific to things that might be useful for you for your particular brand. And that's it. We'd love to take a moment to answer any questions from you guys if you have them. Let's see what you submitted.
Okay, so I'm seeing a couple here, Megan.
Okay.
Okay, so one of them that I'm seeing repeatedly here is, are they going to get the deck?
So yes,
yeah.
Everyone here is definitely going to receive not only just the deck, but also the recording as well.
Cool.
And also those not here, sorry.
Cool. And then I'm seeing another one here. I love the humor example. Okay, awesome. And I'm seeing, how many items do you suggest testing in a campaign? That's a good question.
So
should I grab it?
It's up to you. Go ahead and take it if you'd like.
Cool. So I think it's a good question. I think like the most important part of this question is that you are testing, right? Because we get some people that are just like putting one item, one creative, and that's a problem, right? We see that testing is the way to succeed. And what I've seen, and Megan, tell me if you've seen something else, is that from the video perspective, We usually see that 3 videos to test 3 different videos is probably the best way of succeeding. And then from the sponsored content perspective, there we've seen that the most successful campaigns have between 7 and 9 creatives, combinations of different images and different titles.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've heard. And the only thing I would add is that 9 creatives sounds like a lot of work. But typically what we see is people writing 3 headlines and choosing 3 images for those sponsored content and then mixing and matching them to get 9 different creatives. And that's working well for them. So a little bit less work than writing 9 headlines and finding 9 visuals.
Cool. I'm seeing a question about how often do trends change on the website. So I think that I know that what happens with the trends website is that it takes every single one of our items and it analyzes them for best practices every week when we talk about images and words. And for video, it happens every month. So I hope that I answered that question. And then there's one other question about country differences. So if we're seeing any differences between countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a lot of differences depending on the country that you're targeting. Specifically, very much so, excuse me, specifically very much so in the time targeting KPIs that we showed you guys. So different times of year, time of day, and days of week change drastically depending on the country that you're targeting. And you can see all of those by country insights in the benchmark report as well. Things like, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe that I am, things like types of content, the photo galleries and the video landing pages, and the KPIs and the devices changed a little bit, but those were similar cross country. The time targeting was really what drastically changed.
Cool. It's super interesting to think about it from like a cultural perspective, right? Like when are people online, what days, what times, and how does that change depending on where you are? So, yeah, it's really cool. Okay,
Right.
I think, yeah.
We're running out of time. We actually are right up to the minute. We have exactly 1 minute left. So we just wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us today. Like we said, we will send out the deck and the session recording to everyone who joined us today. And thank you so much. And we hope to see you at another webinar soon.